Hi guys, Togo here with a new video, and this video will be a tier list video for Soul Shuffle in the War Within. This was the tier list I've made at the start of the mid-season, and now we are like 2 weeks further, if I'm not mistaken, and we have a new patch, and there is a lot of things that we can discuss, and I am going to discuss them one by one. And we'll see how the tier list will evolve since the last time I did a tier list. So we're going to reset the presentation. Boom. And I am still going to add a plus because I do feel like I need some separation between those tiers. But again, it doesn't really matter. Some people say that you don't need to separate, and that's fine. So you can take the A plus and put them with the A tiers if you want to. For me, I need the separation because I don't think all classes are equal or all specs are equal. So with that being said, let's talk first and foremost about healers because I think that could be a very good starting point. I do feel like with the mid-season, healer balance has been much more closer. I did like a lot of soul shuffles today as a healer and also as a DPS. But I played Holy Paladin, I played Resto Shaman, I played Resto Druid, I played Mistweaver, and I played Preservation Evoker today. The only ones I didn't play today were Disc Priest and Holy Priest. But as you may know, Disc Priest is still very good. And I do feel like the healing balance, healer balance has been the gap has been tightened. So I would say that you have a clear loser group would be the Holy Priests and the Resto Shamans. I feel like those two are still very weak. I'm going to put them together at the C tier spot. I'm going to talk, first and foremost discuss why they are C tier. Resto Shaman in Soul Shuffle, very hard to coordinate with your allies first and foremost. You are very dependent on your totem and also totems, and you're also very dependent on the enemies not breaking your totems from the get-go. Healing Tide could be broken like in 3 hits. Even some people are actually hitting healing stream totems just to ruin your healing. I don't know what happened, but Riptide just heals so little compared to Holy Shocks, compared to other like sources from other healers. The throughput is really bad for the Resto Shaman, and it is a throughput healer first and foremost because you don't have a lot of like damage reduction except like your Earthen Wall totem, which is again something someone can just walk away from it. Like again, if you're like playing with kiting classes, like for example Frost Mages, BM Hunters, whatnot, they're not going to stand in your totems. They want to kite every single time, and sometimes they're kiting too much and they do get more damage because of it. And Resto Shaman, I think the throughput is the main problem. If they by chance get buffed, it should be on Riptide. They should stop trying to make healing surges and healing wave buffs because they want you to cast that, because the buffs are not enough. Like your healing is still very poor. Like it's not going to rival a Holy Light, like with a Paladin like buffing themselves for Holy Light. They get like big Holy Lights if they want to, and if they can also do that. But they have also big Eternal Flames and big Holy Shocks, which in as a Resto Shaman you don't have that. You have poor Riptides, you have poor totems, you have poor healing waves and healing surges. I do feel like your healing is kind of saved because of the utility you have. You have grounding totem, you have static field totem if you want to, unleash shield if you want to as well. You can push, you can stun, you can hex. Those are like you can also wind shear, which is also one of the best abilities in the game, which is all like very good, but also oversighted by the fact that you're still like healing very poor. Holy Priest, what do they do very bad is that they don't have any damage reduction abilities, like the Guardian Spirit, or I don't know how it's called, like the thing that you're putting on your allies. They don't reduce any damage. It just is like, okay, you're going to get saved if you're getting critical damage, and you are going to be able to be healed more, pretty much. But if you're CC'd, it's not going to help you by a lot. Like it's not a pain suppression, which is just a flat out damage reduction for all damage like incoming, and it's not going to stop even from a threshold of health that you are going to get. I do feel like also you're very squishy, and even if you can get into angel form pretty much, that's the only saving grace, which just makes you unable to get CC'd. You can sometimes expect a trap onto you that is going to finish your angel form. You're going to get trapped, for example, which happens quite often, to be fair. I don't think it's like a good healer right now. You could climb as a holy priest, but it is infinitely harder to do so than with on any other healer right now. I think the throughput is still very bad. Flash heal is like laughable. Heal, so your big heal, is also quite laughable. Like, I do feel like if you need to cast those abilities, it should reward you with bigger heals. And right now they think, I don't know how they think, to be fair, but like they think that mastery is the thing that makes you maybe a bit viable, which is not the case right now. Like, the mastery levels are very low. Your serenity is like the only heal that is going to top anyone, but you don't have a serenity every single time. And your foresight is not the foresight from Dragonflight, where you could have procs and to get back very easily with renew, for example. So right now Holy Priest is really in a sluggish environment. They just need to be buffed by a substantial amount, or just a rework for PvP, because right now it doesn't work. I don't know how it is in PvE, but in PvP it is truly not good. Let's talk about Mistweaver. Mistweaver is actually surprisingly very good in Soul Shuffle. I would say in threes it is very good as well. I'd say that in Soul Shuffle, Mistweaver right now has like 3 builds. From what I've seen like a cost builds where you're playing with Crackling Jade, which is also healing by a lot, and it is nerfed now, so you only have 2 targets, but even then, just 2 targets just tops off the whole team, which is very fantastic. You have the Rushing Wind Kick, which also heals for quite a bit, and also deals a lot of damage, sometimes critting over 1.5 million, doing 1 million normal hits. Just in general, very reliable damage, and you can like reset it pretty reliably as well. So you don't really fist weave, but you're playing kind of like a fist weaver, but you can cast, because you're still playing a cast of Mistweaver build. But you have the Rushing Wind Kick, which is a cone of 20 yards, so you don't even need to be melee form to do so. And then you have your fist weaving Mistweavers. I'm going to just rate the best ones that are playing Mistweaver, and the best ones are the people that can actually play all 3 builds. Maybe fist weaving is a bit like less that it's not that interesting right now, but I would say the Mistweaver that is capable to play those 3 builds are going to be capable to improve in their Soul Shuffle lobbies, because you can then play, depending on who you're facing, the builds that you have at your disposal. And in my opinion, truly in my opinion, it is a A+ spec. It is top 3 healer at the moment for me. It is very strong, very obnoxious to play against, because if you're like a pet class, you already know they're going to top their team with Crackling Jade. I played versus a Mistweaver that had like Rushing Wind Kick, and just like topped off a lot of the healing because of it. So Ancient Teachings. But also in general, they have a lot of healing from Renewing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Soothing Mist with Vivifies. Those are still spammable because you're playing like a hybrid build. And you're dealing also a lot of damage. Like, it is really competing with Disc Priest damage-wise without sacrificing anything except your positioning. And it is also quite hard to kill in general. And Life Cocoon, plus also the Celestial, which is going to give you a Chi Cocoon, and also as well you have your Revival Restoral. It's a very good combination, and also your damage and your availability of damage and such. It becomes Mistweaver becomes like a very good healer, and I think all the buffs that they did to Mistweaver actually translates very well into PvP. And then we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. I think Holy Paladin actually feels a bit less S tier right now. For some reason, again, I played Holy Paladin. I felt like my throughput was a lot lower than in general. It could be also because the lobbies were very terrible for me. That could also be the case. But like, it is not only how I played, but also how my allies played. I felt like their healing was not as relevant as it was before. I didn't know like 10% Eternal Flame would do a lot, but it actually does a lot. 10% on a heal that does 2 million is like shaving off 200k, which is something, right? And with dampening and with like a big MS effect, for example, it then becomes very hard to heal. And then you have like the nerf on the bigger Holy Shocks, which I thought it was kind of nothing, but it does make my Holy Shocks not crit for 3 million anymore. So again, all these things combined could make Holy Paladin feel a bit less interesting. It could be also a bias from me, so I'm not gonna lie about that. It could be a bias, but I do feel like it's either S tier or A plus. That depends on how you see healers in general. For me, the best spec healer wise is still Disc Priest, and now it's a Void Weaver Disc Priest where you could do a lot of damage. You have a lot of healing returned from your Void Blast and from your Void Heart. I don't know how it's called, like the passive on the hero talent tree for Void Weaver. You have a lot of like availability to do a lot more atonement healing, and it does feel like it's very interesting. You have an epic slow on it, you have a lot of damage on it. It's very scary to face one like that is very good, but you could still play like the safer one if you want to with Oracle. That's still a very good one, although it's nerfed. But the Radiant buff, the Flash Shield buff, Flash Shield is not impressive, but you're not going to spam it. But if you can proc it, if you can stack it and then like do one big Flash Shield, it can actually help you to stabilize like health pools. I still think like this priest has the agency of actually dealing a lot of healing, and that's a good thing in general. It's annoying that I have like the ad popping up like this, but I'm going to move it or whatever. I don't know how I can do it. I think I'm going to do it like this. I think it's better. But this priest is S tier in my opinion right now. Pain suppression is still very good. Ultimate penitence, very good. In general, just a very good spec. Now let's talk about another healer. I think it's also a very easy one to rate. Resto Druid. I know that there are a lot of people that say that Resto Druid is like unplayable, it's not good, blah blah blah. The issue is people are still playing Resto Druid as if it was in Dragonflight where it was straight up broken. Right now it is not broken. I would say it's pretty good. It's not like on the level of the top 3, but it's definitely not on the level of the Shaman and the Holy Priest. It has Cyclone, which is one of the best abilities in the game. You could actually heal a lot by just putting your hots, but I mean every single hot, and you like keep up with live blooms and you try to throw regrowths more often, and you know that you need to cyclone some DPS to actually like alleviate of that pressure. If you're playing a Resto Druid that is just not doing any cyclones, you're going to suffer. But that was the Dragonflight gameplay. In Dragonflight, you actually didn't want to do too many cyclones because you wanted to also always keep up with healing, and you just wanted to play laid back because you had good mana and you had good healing. Right now, the mana is not that great. The healing is better than what we had at the start of the War Within, but it's definitely not going to help you if you're playing laid back. You need to play Cyclone game, you need to be active with your CC, stun the DPS, cyclone the DPS, root the DPS, and try to do sometimes a Star Surge, sometimes a bigger Starfire or a bigger Wrath, for example, with the procs, and you can actually heal a bit. Now, is it the best healer out there? No, I think it's very lobby dependent, so I'm still going to put it on A tier, and the general thing and the general theme that there is with healers is, in my opinion, the balance is very tight and it's very comp dependent and lobby dependent. I would say a Holy Paladin doesn't do very well versus Resto Druid because Resto Druid has more range, has Cyclone, which is better than Repentance. You are going to be much faster at casting abilities than a Holy Paladin because Holy Paladin is not running any haste, Resto Druid as well, but they have Heart of the Wild, which can speed up Cyclone, which is still a thing that you can do as well. In general, I think you have matchups where you're going to lose, and you have matchups where you're going to win pretty heavily. For example, mistweaver versus resto druid, it kind of sucks for resto druid because he can actually crackling jade all your 3 of light, like your treants, so they can actually heal their allies pretty easily. So that kind of sucks. Preservation Evoker, for example, kind of eats resto druids for breakfast, although a bit less right now, but it's still a thing where they're going to do a fire buff on the whole team, and there you go. You need to go back to hotting everyone and losing a lot of mana. Talking about Preservation Evoker, I think Preservation Evoker is maybe ahead of Resto Druid, but just not by a lot. I think it's pretty much lobby dependent again. If you're playing lobbies where Preservation Evoker is quite good, you're going to see that it's going to be very capable at winning versus like the meta classes and meta specs. But I also say that if you're playing like lobbies where you are just straight up bullied the whole game, it kind of sucks and kind of makes you feel like it's a B tier spec. So that's why I'm going to still keep it at A tier, because I think the meta kind of plays well versus like with a Preservation Evoker. But it just seems to me that the balancing is very, very close. And what I can also show you, because again, I like to show you also proof, because again, I know you're very intelligent. You might also think like, Togre, we need some proof about it. The truth is, in EU, in US, you guys are weird, I'm very sorry, but in EU, it's very clear. If I'm scrolling a bit down, we have the top 2, which is Holy Paladin Disc Priest, but again, that's since the beginning of the season, so we don't know which ones are actually climbing and which ones are actually like just not climbing anymore, just DCing and not playing anything. But you see like a top 4, right? You see a Holy Paladin, you Disc Priest, Preservation Evoker, Resto Druid, and Mistweaver above 2100. And then you have Resto Shaman, Holy Priest being like the Black Little Duck. And Resto Shaman is one of the specs that are popular to play, but not very good at the ladder representation. That is also being seen with the activity if you want to. If I put activity, I go to solo shuffle, you need 24 hours, and I put like EU, for example, because then it's the patch from the new patch that we got. Can I put 24 hours? I don't think in 24 hours you have that many lobbies, but maybe there is that many lobbies. That could be. So we have 10,000 resto shamans. Okay, compared to that, you have 5,000 preservation evokers, 10,000 resto druids, because resto druids is also very popular in EU. But for the same amount of resto druids, you have the same amount of resto shamans actually playing at a lower bracket. They are not duelists. They are like 1800 or whatever. But you have the double of resto shamans, and resto druid were not broken since the War Within. Like, we can clearly say that the meta was always being Disc Priest, Preservation Invoker, and then it was Mistweaver to a certain extent, and then you had like the other healers, and then Holy Paladin got buffed, and boom, they got like through the roof, and everyone played Holy Paladin at that point. But Resto Druid was never meta in the War Within. So you just clearly see the difference between what the specs are good at and what the specs are kind of bad at. I think Soul Shuffle right now, Resto Shaman is just not kind to them. I think they just need a straight up throughput buff. So I took my time to discuss about the healers. That's done. Now we're going to talk about the DPS. I'm going to try to regroup class per class, so you can also just check and be very easily following the video. If you want to skip ahead, you can always skip ahead class per class section. I'm not going to do timestamps. I'm sorry, guys. It just doesn't help with YouTube. I'm sorry. But if you want to check Warlocks, just stop at where I'm talking about Warlocks. So I'm going to talk about Warlocks right now. So Affliction Warlock. Affliction Warlock is surprisingly good still. I think the meta just helps them a bit. They're a bit more tanky as usual because they got buffed to that. So that's a good thing. I like classes being a bit buffier because right now it's easier to access your targets. It is just what it is. Except like frost mages and whatnot. But like Affliction Warlock, you will never really like struggle to connect on an Affliction Warlock. Now, Affliction Warlock has great damage, has great CC, has the mobility with TP and portals, and if you're very smart and you're playing with a very smart healer, you can actually survive a lot of damage. You still have Haunt Shadow Bolt, which is still king. You don't really play Hellcaller. If you want to play Hellcaller, just do it if you want to, but Wither is just not going to give you the damage that you're going to lose from Shadow Bolting and all the procs that are tied to Shadow Bolt and Nightfall procs and your Malefic Ruptures. I also think like soul rotting someone and gaining a lot of shards just helps you a ton with the smoothness of the spec, which you didn't have in Dragonflight, but which you have right now. It's like doing a soul rot and you can like triple like Malefic Rupture if you're like very free. They're just going to like target you. That's a thing. That's always going to be a thing. But I like to be targeted in general because then I have more control at how I survive and how I use my CDs. Now the truth is you kind of are dependent of the healer. If the healer is just not like paying attention and they're like doing CC while you're getting bursted, it is what it is. You don't really have a lot of choices. But if your healer is somewhat competent and he knows how to do his stuff, you're going to survive most of the damage if you're playing well as Affliction Warlock. In my books, Affliction Warlock is not S tier right now. A plus it could be. It could be. So I'm going to put it at A plus right now. Although I personally think there are other specs that are maybe a bit more A plus, so they could be going A tier. The longer the tier list is going to go. Demonology Warlock, on the other hand, I play it. It's very strong. I personally think it's A plus. I personally think it's even above Affliction Warlock. I think people are like sleeping on it. It does great damage. It is again a bit clunky how it plays, but it actually works. Just put your 2 dogs, go for a direct tyrant, spam some Hand of Guldans. If you have like the possibility to gain soul shards, try to spam Shadow Bolts. If you're getting kicked on Shadow Bolts, do Hand of Guldans. If you're doing Hand of Guldans, you're getting kicked on Hand of Guldans. Then you're going to proceed into Fear spam or Shadow Bolt spam. If you have full shards, just spam Fear until you have like the Fear connected, and then just do your Hand of Guldans, Shadow Bolts, your Demon Bolts procs, and obviously use your demons that are at your disposal. Demons are doing a lot of damage, even though it doesn't seem so. Your Felguard just does no damage though. So that's something that you need to take off of your head. Felguards are just not doing too much. The dogs are, and your own damage is also doing, with all the procs from Soul Harvester. If you're playing Demonology Warlock, please Soul Harvester. Harvester is really good. I'm going to make a guide, most likely about Warlocks, because I'm playing a lot of Warlock these days. And I actually very much enjoy it. Like all 3 specs. So yeah, I think the Demonology Warlock is really a sleeper. It's really good. I think the CC is incredible. You have multiple stuns, multiple availabilities to actually survive with like your Death Coil or your Mortal Coil, Mortal Coil, and with your Fears and whatnot, and your TPs and your portals, you can actually like survive a lot of damage by just knowing how to react on CDs and attacks from your enemies. So that's a good thing. Destruction Warlock, on the other hand, I think the buffs are good, but I don't think it's that enough. Again, I'm making this video literally on the patch day, so I played a lot today. I did see some Destruction Warlock. They were not very impressive. I personally didn't play today Destruction Warlock. I did play a lot of Demonology Warlock because I wanted to test it out as well. But I think right now I couldn't like make another video 1 week like after to see if something has changed in my mind. But for me, it's still a very B tier spec right now. The issue is that the damage is not that impressive. It is impressive if you actually are casting your Chaos Bolts and nobody stops you. But people are going to stop you, and even then, once you have your Chaos Bolts spent, how to build your shards is very annoying because Incinerates kind of does nothing, even though they got buffed. It's not just still nothing. Wither doesn't get a buff. If you want to play with Immolate, then you're playing with the worse hero tons, which is Diabolist, which makes your Immolate hurt a bit, but I mean, it's not enough. I think Wither is just easier to play. You have a haste buff if you want to. And in general, it's like top one or top two best damage in the game as well. But I think right now Destruction Warlock, with the amount of casting you have to do to actually deal damage, it's not, there is no real payoff. You have lobbies where you're definitely going to be very good. B tier is not a bad tier, by the way. It's like average to good. It's in my books it is off meta. You can win with off meta. But it's definitely not a C or D tier where you are going to have difficulties with climbing. Then we're going to talk about Mage. I think Arcane Mage is still not that great. Also, don't see a lot of on it on the ladder, and I play above 2100 right now. Whenever I'm playing my enhancement shaman above 2100, I don't see a lot of Arcane Mages, and whenever I see them, they are impressive, but they're not winning lobbies. They are always like 2 wins or 3 wins max because the healer got 6-0'd. I think right now, I still think it's an underpowered spec. I might be wrong, guys. I just don't see a lot of Arcane Mages, and whenever I do, they don't seem impressive. They seem like inoffensive. They seem like they're gimmicky. They're winning on gimmicks most likely, or I don't understand the spec. But I think the hero talents really suck for them. That's the issue. I think the hero talents, if they were like Frostfire Frost Mages, for example, or Frostfire Fire Mages, they would like be through the roof. If Frostfire was a thing for Arcane Mage, they would be like the best probably, because they would like have a sort of Arcane Blast instant that they would get a proc from, and it would do a lot of damage, like the same way a Frostfire Bolt gets a proc and then you do a lot of damage with it. Unfortunately, Arcane Mage doesn't have that. They have like Splinter Storm, which does no damage. So Arcane Mage is C tier. Frost Mages, this meta is actually very kind for them. Holy DKs are like MIA. You have literally a lot of warriors re-rolling to warrior because they saw a few buffs with it, which is like literally the perfect thing for them. So for me, it's going to be an A+ spec. Still very good. They are like obviously suffering versus like BM hunters and feral druids and SPs. But the good thing is about Frost Mage is that every single meta spec that is actually a counter to Frost Mage actually pairs very well with a Frost Mage as well. So it's like a double-edged sword where you are damned because they're against you, but you're also damning other people because you have a meta spec with you and you are actually bonifying those specs by playing with you. So for me, it's A+. They do a lot of damage with their Frostfire Bolt if they play the right build. But they also need to understand, like, some comps, they don't make you able to cast that many Frostfire Bolts, so you have to swap to an Icelands build. If you can have that and you have that mentality to actually switch your builds depending on comps, you could actually win way more games. Icelands does still a lot of damage, even though it got nerfed multiple times. People should still realize the amount of damage you can actually do as a Frost Mage with Iceland's build. Fire Mage is on the same tier as Arcane Mage, probably. You see a bit more of them. The issue is that they are very squishy if they play Glass Cannon. Very squishy, actually. And if they are not playing Glass Cannon, it does still a lot of damage, but it's not that impressive either. A Power Blast is still a thing, which is a joke, pretty much. They have like no survivability. Their little saving grace is that you actually do a lot of damage while you're focused, which is better than a lot of other specs. But you just die too quickly. If you actually survived a bit more, it could be interesting. But right now, I think the issue is they just don't survive. And they don't have like damage that is really sticking on the enemy. Now on like CC and knowing how to play, and if your altar time doesn't get like purged or whatever, it could do a lot of well, and you could also just climb very well. But I think it's a very random spec, and if you want to climb in social fall, Fire Mage is probably the hardest route as a caster. I'm gonna jump directly to DKs because I want to put a D tier, which is Frost DKs. I think Frost Decay is not good, especially with this current meta. You can climb as Frost Decay, but the more days passes by, the less interesting I find Frost Decay are. The rework was good, but it seems like the longer we have like those like patches and the longer it goes, the more I feel like it's more of a placebo, where it seems like it was a good thing, but it actually turns out to be just crap. And I think they just need a redesign. They still like they nerfed a lot of the things from PvE, and they took it and they said, look, PvP, they're also busted, we're going to nerf it. They nerfed Frost Fever, which does no damage anymore. It actually did a lot of damage, but now it's in a nerf state. Um, I just feel like the buffs that they did to Frost Strike and Obliterate is just not enough to compensate with the other nerfs and other things that they did change towards the hero talent specs. You could still win lobbies as a Frost DK, you could still climb as a Frost DK, but that means that you're very good with it. It's not like you're going to pick up Frost DK tomorrow and say, look, I'm going to get 2.1k or 2.4k. It's probably not going to happen because it is a very hard spec to play in PvP. In PvE, they might maybe laugh about it, but in PvP, it is one of the hardest specs to play because you have to set up a lot. It is like literally a sub DK, a sub rogue without the sub rogue damage or the sub rogue bomb or the sub rogue duel, which you don't have as a Frost DK. So right now, Frost DK is a gimmick spec which if you're gripping the healer and he knows what's up, he actually pre something and you are done. You're not going to kill anyone. If the healer is oblivious and he's getting like gripped and he does nothing and he actually doesn't trinket once, they're going to die. But then again, it's more of the inability of the player to actually adapt compared to like your ability of actually winning games because of your skill. Unholy DK. I think Unholy DK got nerfed pretty hard, and the meta just doesn't suit them. I'm going to put them at B tier right now. That's a real bummer, man. They came from S tier to A tier, A plus to A tier, now a B tier. I think the only saving grace that Unholy DK has is that they have AMS, they have AMZ if you're like using it correctly. You have okay pad damage. You have great CC. I think strangulate or asphyxiate depending on what you want to play. Your blind, your interrupts, all these things are actually very good for DKs, for unholy DKs. That's a saving grace. But I feel like they are very squishy. They're targeted very quickly. They are like kinda kited, although they are like pretty unkited, like unkiteable. They out of a sudden are kiteable, and with the natural enemies being up and up, like for example BM hunters, feral druids, even right now they got like buffs, fury wars and arms. You will see a lot of them, which are great counters to unholy DKs. So I think B tier is like a justified position right now. It's not bad. It's just like okay, it's good, but it is not like as good as it was at the start of the War Within. Um, Warriors. Let's talk about warriors. I think warrior is a good talk. Warrior is that arms warrior is not impressive. I'm going to bump them from C tier to B tier because they have now damage. So that's something that they have at least. But I would say that the meta just doesn't suit them again. I think they lack more than just damage. I think they lack maybe mobility or survivability or anything. But if you want to have like arms warriors being like relevant and very good in the meta, you actually need to nerf the meta specs. If you nerf the meta specs, it might just become out of a sudden an A tier or A plus spec. I think that the damage that they got from the patch notes, from the devs, is simply not enough, but also just seems like a placebo in most cases because again, it is not really impressive. I think they just need more Bladestorm damage. That's something they need. I think they need double Bladestorm again. That's something that they need. I don't think it's a debate. It just is give them back what they had in Dragonflight. And then we can talk about like improvements. I think right now there is no improvement to be made. You see a lot of Retribution Paladins with buffs. You see a lot of Holy Paladins with buffs. You see Frost Mages still a lot. Demonology Warlocks are like something that you should be able to deal with, but you also can die out of a sudden because of their pets. So yeah, I think right now Arms is B tier. Fury Warrior, on the other hand, I feel like damage is high enough to warrant A tier. They have the same issues as Arms, but as a Fury Warrior, you have like big burst potential without like a startup. Once you have popped your avatar, once you have popped your recklessness, once you have popped all the CDs from Fury Warriors, you can actually deal like a lot of damage to actually tranquilize anyone in the battlefield. So I do feel like Fury Warrior is strong. It is closer to B than A plus, that's for sure. So they're not like going A plus anytime soon, but it is in the right direction. I think they kind of need like mobility like Arms, and then it becomes like one of the powerhouses of the Soul Shuffle meta right now. And you should not give mobility to Arms Warrior and Fury Warrior. That's not what I'm saying. But they could easily just nerf other mobility to make them more on par. That's all. I think we can talk about BM S tier. I think it's pretty noticeable that the nerfs didn't do too much. Stomp damage kind of compensated pretty much. It's still one of the best specs in the game because of the possibility to kite very well and still maintain a lot of pressure. The CC is like maybe not as reliable as before, but you can still make it very reliable with your PvP talents. I think right now BM is like a great spec. Probably one of the best ranged DPS if you are looking for one. Hunter, well, they are falling from far, but I'm not going to say that they are going to fall from very far. You see a lot less representation of Hunter, but also just in general, popularity wise, you will see a lot more BM as well. So for that in mind, I do feel like the spec, oh man, I'm going to put them below Fury, so they are very close to B tier. Like this is like one of the specs where I could put a B plus to it and it would not be a shame. But I think right now MM is not as good as before. They got like nerfed and it does feel like it. Survival Hunter, I think for me it's going to be a A tier spec. It does good CC, does good damage. Actually survives a lot of damage compared to Dragonflight. And their butchery change that they did is actually like a very big PvP change. Like they are finally able to play with a AoE build kinda where you're bleeding your allies, your enemies, and actually deal a lot of damage as well. Wildfire Bomb can crit for 1 million. It's like crazy how much damage it actually does compared to what it was in Dragonflight. But the main issue is you are half melee, half range, so sometimes the tides of your Soul Shuffle lobbies are kind of dependent on it. So it is what it is. Let's talk about Assassination Rogue. I think Assassination Rogue is pretty decent actually. I'm going to put them at A tier, probably highest of A tier. They are rogues and they can actually just win games just because of how they exist. So I think all of specs that you're going to see meta, they're going to disappear step by step. For example, Holy Paladin, once people realize mistweaver is a possibility, they're going to jump off their Holy Paladin, for example. And that will make Assassination Rogue way better. But I do feel like it deserves an A tier spot in general. A sub rogue, I'm going to change my mind. So I put the C tier, the previous tier list. I'm going to put them now at B tier. I think it's still average in Soul Shuffle if you're playing like lobbies that are not filled with rank ones. You're going to be very frustrated by sub rogues. By playing a sub rogue, you do have like great damage as a sub rogue, but it's not consistent, and you need to have aligned a lot of stuff to make it work. So for me, it's going to be B tier, but that's mostly because of the potential. If you are like a rank 1 or whatever, yes, sub rogue is very strong and you can make it work, but I think those tier lists are not aimed towards the rank 1s. So again, I think sub rogue is right now B tier. Outlaw rogue, I'm not impressed. Still, I'm going to put them at C tier. I think the damage is better, that's for sure, but once you saw the patch come, I don't feel like they're going to get buffed anytime soon, nor nerfed. And Outlaw Rogue is not doing any damage compared to the other like better specs into the list. CC is not everything, that's for sure. Now, let's talk about Shadow Priest S tier. I think it's very strong, very annoying to deal with, very tanky, and I don't feel like they didn't change, like they did change anything. I think it's still like is the same as before the patch, so still very strong. Augmentation Evoker, I'm going to put them at D tier because I don't know. I never see them, and whenever I see them, it's not that impressive. So for me, it's going to be on the same level as the Frosty game. Devastation Evoker is for me now a 8-tier spec. I think the meta just doesn't suit them. Slowing targets, very good, but it doesn't matter if the target is actually standing still the whole time. So yeah, it is what it is. Elemental Shaman. I think Elemental Shaman is not as strong as before, but it's still very strong. So for me, I am going to put them at A+. I think their builds, you can still play Mastery if you want to, and it actually works. But if you want to, you can play Elemental Shaman without like Mastery and go just Haste, and you can still like be very reliable, and actually you can cast Hex way faster. I do feel like Elemental Shaman is in a good spot, even after the nerfs. I could revisit it in 1 week, but right now, from what I've seen and from the context, I do feel like Elemental Shaman is actually in a good spot. So, Enhancement Shaman, yes, very, very, very good. I think it's a very A+ spec or A tier spec, depending on how you see it. Personally, I would not put it A+ because you still have very bad lobbies, but it's way better than what we had before. I think the 2-minute ascendance is helping a lot with shaping out how games are going to be. It's a bit like Balance Druid, pretty much how they play, like they're waiting scenario alignment or whatever, and they're going to do a go. We are going to wait then for an ascendance go for the enhancement shaman to actually win games or lose games. For example, a good stun, a good CC on the ascendance enhancement shaman can just drop your DPS. So for me, 8-tier spot, a bit below elemental shaman, but that's because of being a melee pretty much. Let's talk about druid first. So feral druid is still S tier. The nerfs are just literally slap on the wrists. Balance druid is for me also a very bad spec. It is going to be C tier. They're very squishy. I think they need just something else, but it is it's too squishy. So it's very hard to actually win lobbies just whenever the healers are not paying attention, and whenever they do, then you can make yourself win against me. So I do feel like Balance Druid is in a tight spot. They need some love towards their survivability, which is not always easy to buff. We have 3 more specs to go, which is Havoc Demon Hunter. I think Havoc Demon Hunter is now a C tier spec, below Arms, above Outlaw Rogue, I would say. They do okay damage and their go is decent, but you cannot really rely on a Havoc Demon Hunter. Your defensives are not great, your CC is great, but that's it. Your CDs are good, but again, they could just sit out and run away. So yeah, I think Havoc Demon Hunter deserves C tier because they are underpowered and they need to be buffed. Retribution Paladin, I think right now it is a 8-tier spec. I think the change towards Retribution Paladin and just Paladin in general kind of saved Retribution Paladin's place into the meta. And I think in general you're going to see a lot more Retribution Paladins pop out of nothing to actually do the necessary to win the soul shuffles. Windwalker. I think Windwalker is a plus spec. I think it's very, very good and very decent actually. It does a lot of damage. You need just to know how to do burst and to survive, and that's it. Your damage itself speaks for everyone, and you can actually win the game on a like literal whim. Like you can literally win the game by just being in the lobby and doing your rotation, and voila, someone is dying from your kicks. So this is the end of the tier list. I'm very tired. I think you have noticed it. But thank you for watching this video. Really, I appreciate you. If you have any comments, please let me know. This is like literally day one. It could change, or my opinion would change with time. But I will be making another tier list video next week to see and compare if the two are resembling or not, or if I'm like drastically mistaken from the early rewards we got from social shuffles in general with like MMR and whatnot. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye.